Good evening. Welcome to South Asia Newsline. I'm Qamar Javed. Here are the top stories we are tracking for you on Thursday, the 15th of December. Hosts of Osama, India hits back at Pakistan at UN Security Council. Sri Lankan minister says growth can return as up to $8 billion in loans expected. And Nepal poll body submits election report to President. Government formation formally begins. And now for all the details. India's Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar on Wednesday lambasted Pakistan at the UN Security Council after it rigged up the Kashmir issue. Jaishankar called out Pakistan for hosting slain terrorist Osama bin Laden and said these are not the credentials to sermonize before the council. In a veiled attack on China and Pakistan, he said multilateral platforms are being misused to justify and safeguard perpetrators.
India's Foreign Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar on Wednesday slammed Islamabad at the UN Security Council over the remarks made by Pakistan's Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari on Indian state of Jammu and Kashmir. Jaishankar, chairing India's signature event on reformed multilateralism, said that the country which hosts slain terrorist Osama bin Laden and attacks its neighbour's parliament does not have the credentials to sermonize before the council. Hitting out at Pakistan, he added, the question of justifying what the world regards as unacceptable should not even arise. He also said multilateral platforms are being misused to justify and protect perpetrators, an apparent indication to China and Pakistan.
The credibility of the UN depends on its effective response to the key challenges of our times, be it pandemics, climate change, conflicts, or terrorism. While we search for the best solutions, what our discourse must never accept is the normalization of such threats. The question of justifying what the world regards as unacceptable should not even arise. That certainly applies to state sponsorship of cross-border terrorism. Nor can hosting Osama bin Laden and attacking a neighboring parliament serve as credentials to sermonize before this council.
On the sidelines of the UN event, Jaishankar also held talks with ministers from Poland, Armenia and UAE to boost bilateral ties. Earlier on Wednesday, he met UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres and unveiled Mahatma Gandhi's bust at the premises of the UN headquarters.
Locals in Tawang district bordering China in India's Arunachal Pradesh state have expressed confidence in the Indian army and credited it for the peaceful situation days after a clash with Chinese troops. India confirmed this week both sides suffered injuries, but there were no fatalities as troops engaged in a face-off in Tawang.
Residents of India's Arunachal Pradesh state have credited the Indian army for the peaceful situation days after a clash between Indian soldiers and Chinese troops near the border district of Tawang. India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh confirmed this week both sides suffered injuries as Chinese troops tried to transgress the line of actual control in Tawang on December 9 to unilaterally change the status quo. There were, however, no fatalities. Locals claimed that the atmosphere in the border region was calm and they are not worried about their safety as they have full faith in the Indian army, whom they would continue to support.
हम लोग तो सुरक्षित महसूस करते हैं इंडिया का फौजी लोग अच्छे से बॉर्डर में बैठते हैं इसलिए ड्यूटी अच्छे से देते हैं तो हम लोग इतना डर नहीं हम लोग को महसूस नहीं होता है
वही हम लोग बहुत सेफ महसूस करते हैं यहाँ में मीन्स तवांग में बैठ के और हमारा ये क्या इंडियन आर्मी के साथ बहुत अच्छा रिलेशन है यहाँ में और यहाँ में कुछ मतलब टेंशन नहीं है हम लोग सेफली कहीं भी जा सकते स्कूल और कुछ ऐसे मतलब कुछ अभी तक नहीं हुआ है
Meanwhile, Tibetans living in exile in India's hill town of Dharamshala staged protest against China for its incursion into Indian territory in Tawang and urged India to relook into its One China policy. They also raised slogans demanding Tibet's independence from China. The clash between troops of India and China is the first after the two Asian giants engaged in hand-to-hand combat in 2020 in Galwan Valley in India's Ladakh territory. The 2020 incident has kept the bilateral relations between Beijing and New Delhi uneasy.
Pakistan's former Premier and opposition PTI chairman Imran Khan on Wednesday accused former Army Chief Qamar Javed Bajwa of issuing NRO to ruling coalition members. In a video address, Khan said what Bajwa did to Pakistan, no enemy could do. He also announced he will declare the date of dissolution of assemblies in Punjab and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa in a gathering on December 17 to pave way for early elections.
Pakistan's former Prime Minister and opposition PTI chairman Imran Khan on Wednesday lambasted the ruling coalition and the former army chief Qamar Javed Bajwa, terming the treatment of his party workers and allies in last 7 months as unprecedented and accused the army of threatening PTI supporters. Virtually addressing the nation, the PTI chief said, "Our allies were receiving calls from unknown numbers and were asked to stop supporting Imran Khan." He further accused Bajwa of issuing National Reconciliation Ordinance NRO-2. Khan said General Bajwa did to Pakistan what no enemy could do to the country. He added while PTI was in power, he was asked by the former army chief to let go of corruption cases against the Sharif family.
NRO जनरल मुशर्रफ ने दिया था। 4 गुना पाकिस्तान के कर्जे बढ़े थे NRO 1 के बाद। लूटमार हुई थी। हमने उठाया था वो बैंकक्रप्ट मुल्क जो 2018 को हमें मिला था कि जब दिवालिया निकला हुआ था। और ये अब NRO 2 जनरल बाजवा ने दिया इनको।
The former premier also announced PTI will hold a public meeting on December 17 in Lahore, where he will disclose the date of dissolution of Punjab and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa assemblies. Local media reports suggest if PTI and its allies manage to win elections of the 2 assemblies, then they will be in better position to win next general elections slated to be held in 2023.
Moving on. A decision on whether the Afghan Taliban administration and the Myanmar junta can send a United Nations ambassador to New York has been postponed for a second time, but could be reconsidered in the next 9 months, according to a UN Credentials Committee report. The UN acceptance would be a step toward the international recognition sought by both.
A decision on whether the Afghan Taliban administration and the Myanmar junta can send a United Nations ambassador to New York has been postponed for a second time, but could be reconsidered in the next 9 months, according to a UN Credentials Committee report due to be approved on Friday. The UN Credentials Committee earlier met on December 12 and agreed without a vote to postpone consideration of credentials of Myanmar and Afghanistan and to revert to consideration of these credentials at a future time in the 77th session, which ends mid-September next year. The diplomat said that the deferment of the decisions leave the current envoys in the seats for their countries as competing claims were again made, with the Taliban and the junta pitted against envoys of the governments they ousted last year. UN acceptance of the Taliban administration or Myanmar's junta would be a step toward international recognition sought by both. The Taliban seized power in mid-August last year from the internationally recognized government. When the Taliban last ruled Afghanistan between 1996 and 2001, the ambassador of the government they toppled remained the UN envoy after the Credentials Committee deferred its decision on the seat.
Sri Lanka's Foreign Minister Ali Sabry has said growth can return in his crisis-hit country as the government is expecting as much as $5 billion in loans by early next year, while the government is aiming to raise up to $3 billion via restructuring of state assets. He added, overall, Sri Lanka's economy has improved with essential imports such as fuel and food becoming regular.
Sri Lanka is expecting as much as $5 billion in loans next year from multilateral agencies besides an IMF deal, while the government is aiming to raise up to $3 billion via restructuring of state assets, its Foreign Minister Ali Sabry told Reuters in an interview on Tuesday. Additional funds are critical for the country that is already saddled with a public external debt of $40.6 billion, of which it owes 22% to Chinese creditors. In September, the country of 22 million reached an agreement with the IMF for a loan of $2.9 billion, which could be approved for dispersal next year.
You are looking at all the others, the multilaterals put together another 4 to 5 billion to purpose, and then investment, if we can have further 3 to 5 billion next year in terms of investment. There is, and also probably President is interested in restructuring some of the institutions. So through that, if he can raise $2 to $3 billion.
Sabry said Sri Lanka was still watching for letters of assurance for debt restructuring from its largest bilateral creditor, China, as well as India. The two countries have backed the restructuring efforts, and Sri Lanka has shared documents and data with them, he said. Inflation, which edged above 70% earlier this year, eased to 61% at the end of November, but the economy is expected to contract by about 8.7% this year. Overall, Sri Lanka's economy has improved with essential imports such as fuel and food becoming regular, Sabry said, adding that the growth to take place, it is going to be 2024 if everything goes according to plan.
In news from Nepal, the process of new government formation has formally begun in Nepal as the Election Commission on Thursday submitted the final election report to President Bidhya Devi Bhandari. The process is, however, likely to take some more weeks as the ruling coalition needs just 2 seats to reach halfway majority.
The new government formation process has formally begun in Nepal as the Election Commission on Thursday submitted the final election report to President Bidhya Devi Bhandari. The process is likely to take weeks, meaning the new government can only be formed in 2023. Earlier on Wednesday, in a press briefing, the poll body informed the Nepali Congress has emerged as the single largest party by winning 57 seats out of 165. The party was contesting only in 91 seats and divided other seats to its coalition partners. The opposition CPN-UML, on the other hand, secured 44 seats in the election held on November 20. The five-party ruling alliance led by PM Sher Bahadur Deuba's Nepali Congress in a joint statement earlier said it will continue the coalition, but they are just 2 seats away from a halfway majority in the parliament.
In a unique way of worshipping their goddess Adaikala Amman, scores of devotees in India's southern Coimbatore city took part in a whipping festival this week where they self-flagellated themselves. Take a look.
Scores of devotees in India's southern Coimbatore city celebrated the unique Sadai Ada Tiruviza, or the whipping festival, on Wednesday, where men self-flagellated as part of rituals to worship the Hindu goddess Adaikala Amman, a form of Hindu goddess of ultimate power, Kali. Devotees were seen painted in sandalwood powder, garland around their necks, dancing to the beats of the instruments and whipping themselves. Children also walked around in traditional attires with whips wrapped around their shoulders as they visited the Pusari Palayam temple to offer prayers to the goddess. Some women also took part in a procession later where they carried fruit platters on their heads as part of religious offerings. Pusari Palayam temple has been celebrating the self-flagellation festival for the past 300 years in the outskirts of Coimbatore to worship the goddess during the end of the Tamil month.
Well, that's all we have for you from South Asia this evening. Now our viewers can watch the show on southasianewsline.com. You can also visit us on facebook.com/SAsiaNewsline and follow us on Twitter @SAsiaNewsline. That's all in tonight's edition. We will see you same time tomorrow. Good night.